You've been told to stretch the tight muscle, strengthen the weak one, ice the swollen joint, rest the painful area. Every one of those instructions assumes the same thing, that the problem spot is where you feel it. It isn't. Your body is not a collection of independent parts that occasionally malfunction. It is a continuous structure, layered, connected, commanded, and monitored, and a problem in one area will show up as a symptom in another. This is the founding principle of osteopathy, stated by Andrew Taylor Still over a century before imaging ever confirmed it. Structure dictates function, not locally, system-wide. Today, we're going to go 5 layers deep to show you exactly what that means, and why almost every pain protocol in modern healthcare and physical therapy doesn't address it. Let's start at the surface. Your body is built like an onion. The superficial layer is your skin, your fascia, and the muscles just beneath it. This is the layer you can grab with your hand. It's the layer that almost every stretch in the gym focuses on. It's accessible. It feels productive, but it's rarely where the problem lives. It can be, but it's not always. Go 1 layer deeper and you reach the intermediate layer. This is where there's muscles, deeper fascias, some spinal erectors, and postural muscles that work every second of every day that you're upright. You never even have to think about them. These may not respond to a 30-second stretch because they've been silently compensating for months or years before you even noticed there was a problem. Go deeper still and you reach the layer that nobody is taught to consider. These are the intrinsic spinal muscles, the ligaments, the blood vessels, the major organs, and deep fascias that wrap structures. You may not be able to access this layer by simply pulling on a muscle. You've been stretching the wrapping paper and wondering why the box underneath goes unaffected. That matters because it sets up everything else that follows. If a problem usually lives in the 2nd or 3rd layer, but every treatment protocol only ever accesses layer 1, that's not a small gap. We're going to close that gap today. Here's what connects all those layers into one: the fascia. For decades, fascia has been just treated as packaging. It's been treated as the inert layer that holds your real muscles underneath it. That model is wrong, and it's wrong in a way that explains some unresolved pain. Fascia is a continuous, body-wide web that wraps everything from your scalp to the soles of your feet continuously. That means without a break. It does 2 things that most are never taught. First, it transmits mechanical force across your entire body. If you pull on one area, somewhere else is going to feel it. You might be feeling it in an area that has nothing to do with the problem. The second thing is that it transmits signal. Fascia is very densely innervated with mechanoreceptors that respond in almost real time. These mechanoreceptors respond to tension. So when that continuous web is snagged in one place, whether it's from scar tissue, a chronic restriction, or repetitive use issue, the pull distributes along that entire line of tension. The pain may show up somewhere else entirely. Attempting to treat only where it hurts is treating the symptom of a potentially body-wide pattern, not the pattern. This fascial web doesn't respect the boundaries shown in your anatomy or PT textbook. Most PT assessments do respect those boundaries. The wrap might be as important as the meat within it. We need to treat the system, not the spot. The layers are not separate. Fascia is what makes them into one. Which brings us to the tissue that almost every pain protocol starts with: muscle. Have a weak glute? Strengthen it. Tight hamstrings? Stretch them. Have a weak core that doesn't engage? Let's do some more planks. Most people have run this loop for months with partial progress or no results. That's because muscles do not function autonomously. Every muscle is under continuous neural command, driven by the spinal cord, modified by the brain, and shaped by signals from joint proprioceptors from the joints that they cross. When a joint is restricted or in dysfunction, it sends altered signals to the spinal cord. The spinal cord modifies the motor output. The muscles surrounding that joint, and often muscles far removed from it, receive changed instructions, altered tone, changed activation timing, inhibition where you expect strength. The glute isn't weak. It's neurally inhibited by the joint it's been recruited to protect. Strengthening it without addressing the underlying joint is like pressing the accelerator while the brake is still on. The muscle cannot override the command that it is receiving. No amount of strength or exercise can do that. The tight hamstring might not be tight. It's in a protective neurological tone because the lumbar spine, sacroiliac joint, or fibular head are telling it to be there. Stretching might release the tension temporarily, but the command restores it, sometimes immediately. Think of the muscles you've spent the most time working on, the ones that never quite resolve no matter what you do with them. Has anyone ever examined the joints that they move? I'm not talking about imaging them. I'm talking about palpating them, testing their range of motion. Has anyone ever asked your nervous system why it's telling the muscle to do what it's doing? If not, you've been treating the effect and not the cause. We need to change the question. It's not, how do I make this muscle behave differently? It's, what is commanding this muscle to behave this way? That one shift changes everything about how an assessment should start. Every time you notice a persistent muscle problem, tight, weak, inhibited, painful, make it a habit to trace back the command. Which joint does it cross? Which nerve supplies it? Is the joint moving freely? Is the neural supply unimpeded? Muscles are the effectors of a deeper command. Change the command and the effector will follow. This is the model osteopathy works from, not because muscles don't matter, but because they are downstream of a greater command. Let me leave you with this thought. If muscles are neurally controlled, respond to joint mechanics, and have a stretch reflex, can you really stretch a muscle? You've been treating the worker without changing the instructions. Ligaments are usually described as straps, passive structures that limit your range of motion. That description misses a key function. It's the sensory organ aspect. Ligaments contain mechanoreceptors that are continuously assessing joint position, range of motion, and danger to your brain and spinal cord. Every second in every move you make. When a ligament is strained, those receptors can be damaged. That ligament stops sending accurate information, and so that joint stops sending accurate information. The brain receives a distorted signal and responds by locking down the surrounding musculature. This increases protective tone to guard a joint it no longer trusts. That lockdown is not a muscle problem. It's the brain's response to a faulty sensor. The ankle you've rolled 3 times since the initial sprain is not bad luck. It's a proprioceptive deficit making every subsequent sprain predictable. The pain of that sprain may have gone away, but the sensor damage is still there. Ligaments are the guardians of your joints. We need to rehabilitate the guardians, not just the muscles surrounding them. A faulty ligament reports faulty information up the chain. The nervous system responds by altering muscle tone. The muscle sits within fascia, which transmits that altered tension across the entire system. And the entire structure was built layer by layer on one foundation. It's the one tissue we haven't talked about yet. Bone is usually treated as an inert scaffold that everything else hangs on. It isn't. It's a living, electrically active tissue, and it remodels constantly based on the mechanical demand placed upon it. This is called Wolff's Law. When bone is compressed, it generates a tiny electrical charge. This is called piezoelectricity. That charge tells osteoblasts where to deposit new matrix. If you load a region consistently, bone will reinforce in that area. If you remove that load through a sedentary lifestyle, a restriction of motion, or through the pattern that we've just spent some time talking about, the signal disappears. Density is lost in that area without any symptom warning you it's happening. Here's where the loop closes. A fascial restriction might alter joint mechanics. Altered joint mechanics change how a load will travel through a limb. That altered load is precisely the mechanical signal bone responds to, which means bone remodels around dysfunction, encoding a faulty movement pattern into its own architecture over months and years. Structure dictates function, but give it enough time and dysfunction also dictates structure. This is not a one-way chain. It is a loop. The skeleton you have today was built by every restriction you've left untreated. So here's the model. A restriction in any layer, superficial, intermediate, or deep, propagates through the fascial web. That altered tension changes joint mechanics. Altered joint mechanics distort the signal from your ligaments. That distorted signal changes the neural command to your muscles. And the altered load pattern is exactly the mechanical signal your bone needs to remodel. This quietly encodes the entire chain into the architecture of your skeleton. Think of an injury you've sustained: a muscle tear, a ligament strain, a tweaked back or neck. What did it do to your range of motion? How do you think that change in your range of motion propagated through the layers? How do you think it remodeled your body? Now you're thinking like an osteopath. This is one application of what structure dictates function means in practice. It's not a slogan. It's a description of how a restriction in one layer becomes a symptom in another, and eventually a permanent structural change, through a connected system that doesn't respect the boundaries shown in your anatomy textbook. Anyone can find where it hurts. Osteopathy asks a different question. What structure is dictating that function? And how far has the system remodeled around it? This is the foundation that this series builds on. Next, we go further into the blood supply and drainage to continue the structural picture. If this reframed something that you've been dealing with, follow and subscribe to my osteopathy series for more. We aren't looking for disease. We are looking for health.